Students at Rutgers University in New Jersey are demanding the university publicly support the professor who wrote the book on Antifa. That professor recently fled the country after Turning Point's Rutgers chapter raised concerns about the university employing him. Now, the Turning Point chapter is taking a ton of flack after sounding the alarm, with one member of Rutgers leadership now calling for the removal of 2 Turning Point officers. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-hosts, Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany. And also joining us today, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and Todd Pyro, co-host of Fox and Friends First. Now, first, let's go to Eric Shawn live in studio with more on this story. Eric.
Hello, Emily. Well, a Rutgers University administrator now wants Turning Point USA's campus officers booted after a professor said he fled the country because of death threats. Professor Mark Bray fled to Spain after he says Turning Point USA publicized his work on Antifa, and that sparked a firestorm against him. Well, the Turning Point USA chapter says Bray not only writes about Antifa, but he supports the movement. So the group started a petition to get him ousted.
Our main goal with the petition was to hear a comment from workers. We don't believe that he should be employed at this school. We believe that he is a danger to conservative students on campus. We wanted to bring light to some of his actions.
But on Friday, the Rutgers University Senate is set to vote on a resolution demanding the university support and protect him. In an op-ed piece, Rutgers president today, William Tate, says muzzling Bray is an example of cancel culture, writing, quote, "The role of the university, however, is not to prevent discomfort or protect ideology. Our responsibility is to protect the conditions for inquiry and debate. We do this by modeling the free exchange of ideas, upholding the law, and fostering a secure environment for teaching and research." Bray is the author of this book, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Half of the book's proceeds go to support international anti-fascist efforts. Well, in an interview with the AP before he left the country, Bray said he just researched Antifa, and he rejected Turning Point USA's claims about him.
I myself am not Antifa, although I do support anti-fascism. Broadly speaking, I oppose fascism, but I'm a researcher. I come at this as a researcher and as a professor, and the efforts by Turning Point USA to paint me as the mastermind of Dr. Antifa is ridiculous.
Well, a school administrator says Ava and another Turning Point USA officer on campus should be stripped of their roles because they are not undergraduate students. Ava is a graduate student. We've reached out to her for comment, and she told us that she will have a reaction to that demand as soon as she can. We'll get it to you when she does. Emily, back to you.
Eric Shawn, thank you. All right, Todd, let's unpack here. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, I understand the argument that he's an explainer of what Antifa is. Well, if you're trying to explain, trying to educate the people, don't label it as a handbook, because all the handbooks that I have in my house are how to do something, like my handbook on plumbing. It's not an explainer on the theories of plumbing. It's how to do plumbing. Second, to build off of something Eric Shawn said, the funding, this is from the book itself. Quote, at least 50% of author proceeds will go to the International Anti-Fascist Defense Fund, which is administered by more than 300 Antifa, his word, not mine, from 18 countries. So if you are funding Antifa, which has been designated by Donald Trump, the president, as a terror organization, you unequivocally should not be teaching at a university. Universities can be hotbed of discussion, different points of view. That's what we want. That's how a university thrives. But funding a terror organization is where we need to draw the line. That's why we're seeing such a push toward trade schools. If you just want to go to a school and get an education to learn how to do something, Rutgers and schools like it that are promoting this are not the place for you.
Yeah, and Kennedy, I wanted to dig into that very same point with you on the president, the Tate's commentary, where he talks about that, well, this is cancel culture, but isn't it simply consequences? And if someone is employed in a position to affect influence and potentially indoctrination over students and is contributing directly to terrorist organizations, to me that seems like a no-brainer where it would disqualify them for employment He's free to say and do what he wants. That's the point. But it's accountability and consequences that Turning Point here is seeking.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at the consequences of private text messages, you know, possibly upending and destroying careers and lives. You know, this wasn't a private manifesto that he had on his MacBook that someone hacked into, but that's what he's acting like. He's acting like he's some sort of a victim here. This is a book, a handbook, a manifesto that he published under his own name. It wasn't under a pseudonym. It wasn't when he was cosplaying as some stinky anti-fascist warrior. You know, this is a guy, this is a professor who, you know, has conceivably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on his education. And this book is the exclamation point on the conclusion that he has come to. And the conclusion, as we have seen in cities like Portland, it's pretty bad. Like, Antifa wants to burn the entire structure down. But what are they offering when the infrastructure is burning, when it's in ruins? That's my problem with this. It's not the idea that, you know, some of these establishments need a pushback. It's that what they're offering is dystopia. It is violence. It is potentially murder. It is unlivable cities. And, you know, that is what he's lobbying for. He's not talking about it. It's not someone who works in a counterterrorism think tank who goes out and studies Hamas and Hezbollah. They are not endorsing those organizations. They're telling, it's the same thing with the narco cartels. Like, they are telling us how they work, who populates it, and then law enforcement uses that and goes, oh, great, now we have intel and we can figure out how to defeat them. This is a full-throated endorsement of Antifa and nothing else, an organization that is very violent at its core and, you know, according to some, a terrorist organization. Not a great thing to be endorsing on a campus.
No, and Kaylee, to Kennedy's points, they're also anonymous and they flee immediately. There is zero accountability. There is zero engagement, unlike Charlie Kirk and Turning Point that fostered debate. Take off the mask. Talk to me as a human. I see you and I respect you, and let's talk about this interchange of ideas. Now we see a professor that's simply fleeing the country rather than saying, yes, let's talk about these ideas. In part, it makes you wonder, because of the fleeing aspect, perhaps he too sees that this is a grotesque concept to stand behind.
Yeah, and there was even that self-proclaimed Antifa member who killed Aaron J. Danielson during my tenure at the White House in Portland. I constantly bring that up because I think it's important to highlight people who've lost their lives because of violence, and in some cases from self-proclaimed Antifa members. This individual, Professor Bray, I was reading through an interview he did in 2017 with NBC. Bear with me for a moment. I think it's important we hear what he has to say. He was asked, you write that violence represents a small, though vital sliver of the anti-fascist activity. He's asked about it being vital. He replies, if you're organizing against violent fascists, being able to defend yourselves can unfortunately come in handy. Well, what does that mean? He goes on to say, the question is, how bad does it have to become before self-defense becomes legitimate? I'd love for you to pontificate on that a little further, but listen to this. He was directly asked, 2017, do you consider Trump one of those emergency moments where potentially more violent tactics are necessary? He says the anti-fascist argument is that any amount of white supremacist or neo-Nazi organizing is worthy of emergency consideration. This man teaches our students. How did this man get hired? One more recent example, October 4th, he says only mass anti-fascism, legal or not, can save us. I want to know more about these thoughts. What does he teach in the classrooms? It is very important to dig into this because, yes, you have First Amendment rights, but that right becomes much diminished when you are in a classroom setting and it's stacked up against professional standards. So, Rutgers, what are your professional standards?
Yeah, and we've talked about this. You're right. The First Amendment rights are diminished in a school setting. And in this climate, horrifically, of political assassinations, subjugation of the president, and being open about it, that is certainly cause for alarm at a minimum.
What is a neo-Nazi organized group that he wants to put together? Like, I have a lot of questions based on his questions. I have to give him credit, though. The way that he wrote this is kind of interesting because he writes it as questions.
Yeah.
So, right?
That's so true.
Yeah, he's not really laying down the law necessarily, and that's such a trick, right? That's a communicative trick. You just ask it a question, then everybody kind of reaches their own conclusions based on the 99 questions that you only left them one conclusion to reach. So he's kind of gifted at that. The problem with this is exactly what Kennedy said. That this is not being said in an open arena where people can exchange ideas. This is being said on a campus that's supposed to cultivate the ability to discuss those ideas, and also some of those seep in right? Like proper English, those types of things. This is going in the same portals as good math skills and calculus. That's the problem. It's where it's happening. So could he have turned this into, like Charlie Kirk did, maybe invited some people to campus? Maybe he could have had a discussion. I don't know. But he put it in a handbook. And that kind of sells it for what it is, no matter how many questions that he asks. And it's someplace where people have their children. And some of them are over 18. But they're there to learn. So it doesn't all match. I don't know what they should do. I'm not a big, fan of killing free speech. The university is going to have to figure this one out with regard to that. But we know who he is.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.